Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Ozai the Phoenix King. I have some big thoughts on this guy, so let's get right into it after you guys click on that whatnot link and claim your free $15. And as always, you guys can get 10% off all of your Tolarian library proxies whenever you use code DT4D. My friends over at Baron of Dice are having a 15% off site-wide sale until the end of October. So now's the time to go pick up those awesome playmats and deck boxes that match. These are high quality and overall just unique. I'm really just in love with the look and feel of these deck boxes. When it comes to these guys, yes, they sponsor me, but I am a customer first, so I had to let you guys know, go get everything while it's 15% off until the end of the month. Now, let's read what Ozai does. This is a 6 CMC commander. 2 generic, 2 black, and 2 red. He's a legendary creature human noble. He has trample, firebending 4, and haste. He also says if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes red instead, and Ozai has flying and indestructible as long as you have 6 or more unspent mana. So the goal here is not only going to be able to cast this guy, but you kind of want to cast this guy and then instantly need to generate at least 2 more mana. That way, once we spend 6 CMC on our commander, we can instantly make him indestructible. So this guy is deceptively 8 CMC, I will say, but there's a lot of ways to generate 8 CMC, especially whenever he attacks. He's going to give you 4 mana right away, and then we can just ritual into the rest of it. So it's not going to be hard to float 6 CMC and give him indestructible. Going to be very, very easy. I think the problem that this deck is going to have is card advantage, because we are just going to be able to generate a ton of mana. So we need card advantage, we need more ways to generate mana, that way we can just take this mana to exponential growth, and then additionally we are going to put a lot of ways to utilize that mana, that way whenever we get a ton of it, we can kind of just put it into one spell and try to win the game. Another thing that's very amazing with this card is extra combat steps. It's not hard to see the synergy between firebending and extra combat steps. My creatures generate 4 mana when they attack. Well, throw in extra combat steps that cost 4 mana, and you can just keep attacking. Not to mention this guy has 7 power, so killing people with him whenever he has flying is not going to be hard at all. This guy's going to be a powerhouse, but there's a ton of different ways to build him, so let's get right into it. I'm super biased here, but I think the strongest way to build this guy is, like I said, we need rituals, and additionally we need a ton of card advantage. The easiest way to get explosive card advantage in these colors is to use high-powered creatures and sacrifice them to the effects that allow you to draw cards equal to a creature's power. This method is tried and true. It even synergizes with the other Ozai, and then once we're able to get a ton of card advantage, it's not hard to draw into enough extra combat steps to go ahead and win the game. Now, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about what we would do if we built this guy as a Powers Matters commander. We're just going to talk about the more unique cards that this guy can really utilize to take his power to the next level. The first card is Doubling Cube. This one's kind of gross, right? 2 CMC and then 3 CMC to tap it to double the amount of each type of mana in your mana pool. This means every single turn we can just double the amount of mana we have, and then we're just adding more mana onto that and then doubling that. It just gets insane very quickly. We're going to have a lot of mana to shove into some X spells that can easily kill the entire table. Crackle with Power is one of my favorite ways. If we have 18 mana, I'm pretty sure that's going to be X equaling 6, and then we can deal 36 damage to each opponent. That's going to very easily kill the entire table in most scenarios. You can also use the Crater Hoof of X spells, that being Torment of Hellfire. This one's just tried and true. X into generic, repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So even if this doesn't kill every player, their board is going to be gone. I did also want to mention some rituals like Ironcrag Feat. This is a 4 CMC ritual. It's 1 generic and 3 red, and it says add 7 red mana to your mana pool. You can only cast 1 more spell. So in the context where we're trying to cast our commander, it wouldn't be that bad to go ahead and cast Ironcrag Feat, and then you spend the extra 2 black mana and all of the red mana we just generated to go ahead and cast our commander. We attack with our commander, and now we have enough floating mana to not only give him indestructible, but he also has flying. Braid of Fire is another card that doesn't get to see a lot of play but is perfect for this deck. It's a 2 CMC enchantment that has a cumulative upkeep that gives you 1 red mana. Now this is usually bad because it just goes away in your upkeep, so if you can't use it at instant speed, it's basically a useless card, but in this deck it's just going to give you progressively more mana on your upkeep as long as your commander stays alive. Let's talk mana sinks. I think one of the best mana sinks in this deck is going to be Pyrohemia. This is a 4 CMC enchantment that says at the beginning of the end step, if no creatures are on the battlefield, you have to to sacrifice Pyrohemia. And then it says for 1 red mana, Pyrohemia is going to deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. So it's essentially an earthquake spell that just stays on the battlefield. And remember, our commander is going to have indestructible 90% of the time, so we can make it to where the majority of the game, we have our commander on the battlefield and our opponents aren't able to let anything else hit the field. Because remember, we have all this red floating mana, so they can cast a creature spell, and as long as it has toughness and we have enough mana to sink into Pyrohemia, we're able to just kind of sink all our mana into Pyrohemia and keep everything off the board indefinitely. Another really cool power sink, especially if we're talking about the context of additional combat steps, is Captivating Crew. For 4 CMC, 3 generic and 1 red, you get to gain control of target creature an opponent controls until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. So kind of just every single combat step, we're generating 4 additional mana off of his fire breathing, so we can kind of just yoink one of our players' creatures every single combat step. And in the context of a power matter strategy that wants to sacrifice creatures to draw a ton of cards, we can easily sacrifice our opponent's creatures to draw a ton of cards. Inferno the Star Mount is also just a really fun power sink that doesn't make a lot of sense in a lot of decks, but I think it makes a lot of sense here. This is a 6 CMC legendary creature dragon. It says this spell can't be countered, flying, haste, and we can pay 1 to give Infernal Star Mounts +1/+0 until end of turn, and when its power becomes 20 this way, it deals 20 damage to any target. So not only are you going to have a 20 power dragon, that 20 power dragon is just going to straight up dome someone for 20 damage. So you can kind of just one-shot a player with this combo by itself, and it's not really even a combo. You need a ton of mana to do it, but it's just a cool thing we can do whenever we have a ton of mana. You could also do some really weird Goblin Engineer shenanigans as long as you attack with Goblin Engineer the first time, which I know you're saying, why would you attack with Goblin Engineer? Because in the context of extra combat steps, they untap every single creature that attacked this turn. So if we're able to attack with our Goblin Engineer, now he's going to untap every single extra combat spell we cast. This is going to allow us to loop in cards like Brass's Tunnel Grinder, that's allowing us to discard our hand and draw more cards to find more extra combat steps. It can also allow us to sacrifice our Doubling Cube, bring our Doubling Cube back into play, tap it again to add even more mana to our mana pool. You know, there's a lot of really funny shenanigans we can do here. We could even throw in the Fire Crystal. This is a legendary artifact that says 2 generic, 2 red. Red spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Creatures you control have haste, and you can spend 6 mana, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, and now again, we're able to utilize this to create token copies of Goblin Engineer, to sacrifice our Doubling Cube and reanimate our Doubling Cube. There's a lot of really funny stuff we can do once we just have a ton of mana. Dino DNA is also a really cool mana sink. It's a 1 CMC artifact. We can pay 1 to exile target creature card from a graveyard, activate that only as a sorcery, so it is pretty good graveyard hate. And then we can spend 6 mana to create a token that's a copy of target creature exiled with Dino DNA, except it's going to be a 6/6 green dinosaur creature with trample. Now you only activate this as a sorcery, but still, just the fact that we can spend 6 mana to get a token copy of whatever we want, and it's going to be a 6/6, means this is going to very easily be a game ender in this deck once we have a ton of mana and anything meaningful exiled under it. You already know, I definitely want to get Helm of Host on this guy as well. This is a very expensive artifact, but let's be honest, our commander is going to generate a ton of mana, and whenever we have multiple copies of our commander, we're just going to generate even more mana, so it's kind of worth the cost, right? It's 4 to enter the battlefield, it's 5 to equip, but it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary, that token gains haste. So now we're generating a lot of 7/7s that are flying indestructible and generate 4 red mana whenever they attack. It's going to get crazy. This goes without saying, but Aggravated Assault is just not going to be okay in this deck. It's a 3 CMC enchantment. You spend 5 mana to untap all your creatures and get an additional combat step. This guy gives you 4 additional mana whenever he attacks, so as long as you can make up that mana any other way, you can kind of just go infinite with this, and again, pretty disgusting. Don't recommend it, but it's something we can do. Null Spine Dragon is also going to be insane in this deck. It's a 7 CMC creature, but it says when Null Spine Dragon enters the battlefield, you can discard your hand and draw cards equal to the damage dealt to target opponent this turn. Remember, our commander is dealing at least 7 damage to one opponent, so as long as we can cast this later on in the turn, you can draw a ton of cards with this guy, and that's for sure going to find you an additional combat step, so you can keep going, storming off with your extra combat steps, and you get to keep dealing a lot of damage. Clive is also going to be a super fun card to run in this deck. He's also going to be super fun whenever we talk about Helm of the Host, right? But this is going to be a 6 CMC legendary creature human noble warrior, and he says whenever Clive enters, you may discard your hand. Then you get to draw cards equal to your devotion to red. Our commander has 2 red pips, so does Clive, so even with just those 2 on the battlefield, you're discarding your hand and drawing 4 cards. And then for 6 mana, you can even flip this guy over. He's going to fight somebody. He's going to generate 4 red mana at the beginning of your upkeep, and additionally, he's going to be that 9/9 Saga Dragon. But again, what I really like this guy for is his ETB and his ability to draw a ton of cards, because that is what this deck is going to need so it doesn't just peter out. That's going to do it for my first looks and first thoughts. Let me know if you want me to flesh out the entire deck list. I think this guy can be really, really strong. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Happy Halloween!